turn it over to Caroline to get started.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah. And thank you all for having me. It's such a pleasure to get to speak with you. 7 sessions so far. It just sounds like it's been an amazing lineup. I am both incredibly grateful for the opportunity to get to talk to you and very impressed with your endurance. To the extent that this is one of many things that you could be doing with your time right now, we appreciate you being here. As was said, I'm going to really dive into how AI, machine learning, intelligence is a broader topic, is helping us improve the quality and the productivity of Microsoft Teams calls and meetings. As was mentioned, I am from our product marketing team in Microsoft Teams. Yes, we do call ourselves the Teams team. Yes, it is weird. We just have learned to embrace it. The word team has become a bit of a thing, as you might imagine. But my focus is really on the meeting side. So I will, of course, be speaking to calling today. But my colleagues on the line are going to help me go deeper on any of your calling specific questions. And again, let's jump in. Please do use the chat for questions. We love to hear both your reflections and perspectives on what we share, as well as anything that we can better clarify. So let's get started. I wanted to talk just at the beginning, and you may have seen this slide before, because it's really anchored us as an organization when it comes to how we think about our roadmap, and the solutions that we're building to support our customers. And it's really these two massive shifts that have happened effectively concurrently for organizations around the world. The first of which being the normalization of flexible work, and what that's meant for how we get things done, where we sit, how we work together, et cetera. And the second being just the extraordinary rise of AI as a part of our daily lives. So if you're going to look at each one of these in turn, the pandemic effectively forced what could be called a grand experiment. Experiment implies a level of optionality that I think the pandemic did not offer. When you're literally ordered to stay at home, you're going to see charts like this where people stay at home. But the thing that's been extraordinary about it is that it caused this massive assessment of, will this work? I know for many of the companies that I talk to around the world, pre-pandemic, there was deep-seated uncertainty about whether things could even really function if people weren't in person. Can we do this? Can we be productive? Can we still meet? Can we get our things done that we need to get done? And what we've seen both from qualitative and quantitative research is that the answer has been overwhelmingly yes. It's been different in a lot of cases, but what many companies have learned is that remote work is not just okay. In many cases, it's actually benefiting their employees and thus benefiting their ability to be productive as an organization. So after that big spike where we all retreated to our living rooms and our coffee tables, you see that we are coming back down, not back to where we were before, but at a much higher level of where remote work from home, hybrid, et cetera, type work arrangements are prevalent. And the desirability is there. We like to say we're not sort of going back, right? You can't sort of take the 3-year experience that we all had and then everyone is just going to sort of forget about it and go back to the normal way. What we see moving forward is that employees are just overwhelmingly voting with their feet, with their applications, et cetera, to pursue jobs and therefore organizations that are offering at least some extent of flexibility in their worksite arrangement. 14% of posts in the US, our fun friends at LinkedIn provide us all sorts of interesting data, are offering remote as one of the job location options, and they get more than 50% of applications. So you can see this sort of natural alignment of interest in roles that are going to allow an employee to be effective. So the second big trend is AI. And I want to just be clear, nobody is saying that AI only just happened this year. If you have been following the industry, AI has been around for some time. We use different words at different periods. I'll use different words today when it comes to large language models, machine learning, intelligence, AI, et cetera. But this has certainly been a journey that's been many years in the making. The difference is the tipping point that we see ourselves at now. So if you look at the amount of data in sort of the world's repertoire, that was produced by generative AI specifically, less than 1% a year ago, small potatoes, as you might say. And in many cases, sort of a fringe, or sort of, I like to call it as like the science project part of the world, right? Like very specific applications, very specific functionality, small groups within companies experimenting with how AI and machine learning could augment their processes. Again, there's just been this huge swing. Like we are at the point where we are no longer in science project land. We are in, how can this be real? And frankly, the appetite for it has taken a huge turn as well. So I wanted to share with you, we did a study in January of this year. We talked to several thousand people across 4 different countries specifically. And we were asking them more generally about how was hybrid work going? This hybrid work thing, is it working? Great question, right? And one of the parts that we dug into was around whether or not they had access to AI or machine learning powered tools. So for the folks who said yes to that question, the respondents to the survey who said, yes, I have access to either automation, again, we use several different words to help them know what we were talking about. An overwhelming majority, nearly 90% of them used words like fulfilled when they talked about the benefit that it provided them. This idea that it allows me to focus on the work that really matters. It removes parts of my job that are time consuming and feel like ill-spent calories, was just the overwhelming response for the people who have access to it now. And for those who have access to it now in some shape or form, 9 out of 10 say they hope they can have more. They've seen that this can help their daily productivity. We often talk about this idea that you can hear all the research in the world, but the magic moment happens when you try it and it's useful. And you're like, oh, actually, this helped me. This made a difference. And the sort of swell of enthusiasm that comes from those moments, again, we're seeing some indications of it, and we are really, really excited about what we think we're going to be able to deliver through our capabilities and through the broader sort of co-pilot system that we have announced. I'm going to talk more about that today, and certainly happy to take your questions, as well as some of the more foundational elements that AI is supporting for the Teams product. And if you've heard us talk about AI and Copilot, et cetera, we certainly talk about apps, we talk about sidebars, we talk about, sort of models that run in the background, et cetera. But I want to be very clear, for a Microsoft Teams perspective and a Microsoft perspective more broadly, intelligence is not a bolt-on. You see some solutions out there where you have the thing you're doing, and then you can kind of go to the AI thing as needed, right? You have your business app, you have the process that you're running, and then there's a little sort of pop-up you can find that might apply some AI benefits. And that's very different than the approach that we've taken. We believe that the benefit of this technology is really platform level. It's woven into the very fabric of how things work. There's certainly different user interfaces. There are places where you're having an interaction with an AI model. Copilot's a perfect example. It's conversational, right? You get to use your natural language to be able to interact with the benefits of this technology. But that's only a piece of it. There's another piece that's actually just improving those fundamental elements of how the product works and how it performs. And so I wanted to actually start there. We will go to Teams Premium, Intelligent Recap, Copilot, et cetera. But I wanted to start with some of those foundation places. Again, if nothing else, to make the point that what we see as an opportunity from intelligence in Teams really does run the gamut from basic quality all the way up to that generative creativity unlocking style deployment of intelligence. So I'm going to play a couple clips for you. I want to talk a little bit about audio. So many of us, I'm based in the Seattle region, which is probably not surprising. I'm from Microsoft, have access to just fantastic network quality. But even here, I do things like drive across the 520 bridge. If you're familiar with the region, you know what I'm talking about. There's a very Let's call it the ultimate bottleneck, where everyone moving from one part of the city to another has to cross this very narrow lane of traffic. And if I am trying to take a call while traversing said bridge, I almost always run into problems. I also share a home with two small people who are my dependents and who occasionally do things like take classes from home and try and join a remote karate class and all sorts of things. I'm just trying to give you examples where even in our modern day advancements, there are still many situations where network limitations become a problem. And we do see low bit rate continuing to contribute to dissatisfaction with the number, increase in virtual meeting requirement. These low bit rate incidents are just incredibly problematic and frustrating. And so one of the things I wanted to talk about just quickly when I speak about the foundational layer of AI is things like PLC, packet loss concealment. Like, how can we make that better? How can we improve scenarios where your network is not able to provide the highest level of fidelity that you're looking for, and leverage, the baseline improvements that we had with our codec, which is Satin, which is roughly, 18 months, 2 years old now at this point, and continue to augment that with AI-driven features that are going to make the experience better and better. So I'm going to try and play an example. Sarah and Jonathan are going to keep me honest if we have any audio issues. But this is an example of what an original experience would have been with PLC, with packet loss concealment, and what it looks like with our improved AI-based technology. Okay, so that was the thing that many of us have had to experience over time: low bit rate, packet loss, choppy audio. Here's how we're able to improve it using the AI functionality. So I do like that he talks about enjoyable, because there's nothing, frankly, more painful than bad audio when you're trying to have an important conversation. But it's really that ability to intelligently plug the gaps. What we're seeing is up to 4 times longer concealment and with greater accuracy. And that will keep getting better, right? Like, the more we train the model, and the more our sort of underlying tech improves, the better and better we can get at using the tech to improve those low bandwidth situations, the network issue situations. Oh, I think it's going to play the audio until I go to the next page. Okay, here we are. It's funny, the things that are automated in my deck and the things are not, we're not totally on the same page, but now I understand where they are. So the next one I want to talk about is what we call interruptability. Now, both Word and PowerPoint have reminded me multiple times that interruptability is not actually a word in the English language, but we believe it should be, because it's a really critical piece of what is a natural and fluid conversation. When you and I are talking one-to-one or one-to-many even, it's very natural for us to speak over each other, and not in a rude way, in a flow way, right? One of the things that we are using AI for, and we have trained this model on, I think it's something like 30,000 hours of conversations, is enabling a true full duplex sound system. So as opposed to the sort of traditional way of doing these types of audio video calls where you either are speaking or listening, neither the two shall meet. And it's very sort of uncomfortable to interrupt each other. It means you're shutting someone off, etc. We are now able to offer that full duplex that allows the conversation to flow much more naturally and much more as it would in real time. We're also doing things like reducing reverberation. Many of the rooms that we now join meetings from, if you see my previous comment regarding your kitchen table, your dining room, maybe I've joined meetings from closets when my children are underfoot, you may run into terrible acoustic scenarios. Like that's very common, right? And so another thing that our ML model and our training can do is to help improve the quality of audio when we do have those poor acoustic situations. So speakers can almost sound as if they're speaking directly into a microphone, even if they're in a room where we have sound bouncing. So being able to reduce that echo, again, it's a foundational thing. it may not even occur to you that it's happening, but you know it's better. It's a huge contribution to the quality of meetings from those spaces that are not, I'm in what feels like a chamber in some ways, a conference room that's very much dedicated to this type of interaction, but many of your users are not. And so how can we improve that, leveraging the power of those machine learning vehicles? Another one is noise suppression. Many offerings on the market, on your cell phone, lots of different functionality that's trying to tackle this one because the pain is real. And I will play this clip for you really quickly, but this is an area that we have continued to make a lot of improvement, and frankly, we are continuing to invest. You can go from having basic noise suppression, like, what I'll show you if there's a vacuum cleaner in the background, something more obvious, to the next frontier, which is really around more specific voice isolation, and is letting us get deeper and deeper into a world where the audio is great and it's only picking up what it's supposed to. So I'm going to play this clip for you. If nothing else, it's kind of fun. Okay, so I love those because if any of those examples were happening regularly, I think we would all probably be fairly annoyed. The roommate vacuuming while you're trying to take a work call is, again, we would probably have had a discussion at this point about whether or not that was appropriate. But it is amazing how far we've come, right? In terms of, starting with some very basic level sort of tuning towards what we can identify to be a voice, to getting increasingly advanced and sophisticated in what sound is coming through and what sound isn't. And that is, again, a huge part of fulfilling on that promise of flexible work. As we saw earlier, this is going to be the norm. This is my colleague, Jason Gregory, in this last shot. Many of us, even if we do return to office, will maintain some degree of work outside of it, right? Whether that's a couple days a week, the average we're hearing is typically 2 to 2.5 days a week out of office. So this ability to have the same quality, whether you're sitting in the crazy booth that I am, or you're sitting with your child in the background having a pretzel snack, is really unlocking that ability to maintain productivity and professionalism across multiple settings. I wanted to switch next to some of our video features. So video is an interesting evolution that we've seen too. I remember very, very clearly, been with Microsoft long enough to have gone through the whole Skype for Business, Link, Messenger, full gamut of different functionality when it comes to online video meetings. I remember very clearly the days where we had to effectively coerce people to turn on the camera. I don't know if that happens at any of your organization, but it became this like, no, really, like we really actually would like to see you. And we've come so far from there. Now it's, at least in our organization, it's the default, right? Like you put on the camera, you want to engage, you want to have that connection however you possibly can. But again, network bandwidth constraints, it can get very choppy. And we do see some people simply giving up. And so another place where we are applying AI-based optimization is to help adjust your video settings, your video quality when you do see packet loss. So I'm going to show you a couple of different examples where we are able to maintain the smoothness and the fidelity of the experience, even in situations where we have, 5% burst packet loss, 10% burst packet loss, and you'll see her move back and forth across the screen. So I love the idea of her sitting there and doing this over and over again for that video. But it is a great example of, we're going to see conditions will not always be perfect, right? Like there will be situations where it is just enormously helpful for our systems to be able to compensate for significant packet loss. And one of the things that we've tried to do is to both make the system more intelligent and to optimize for the conditions that it's seeing, but also to allow your teams to set constraints and monitor limits, et cetera, such that you can further optimize the video. So based on the conditions within your organization, setting things like bitrate caps to make sure that you are trying to enable the best possible experience, and you're not having these like wild swings between this one was really great and then 5 minutes later it was really terrible. So again, we think it is that combination of the automated improvements that come from AI, as well as the intelligent selections that a customer makes within their own environment based on what they know about their network conditions and the typical circumstances of the meetings that people are holding. Oh, I went too far. Going back one. The last one in my video quality situation is really around, it's very similar, but this idea of how we optimize the backgrounds and the content that's being shared while we're experiencing changes in network quality and bandwidth. So one of the things that we're doing from an optimization perspective is to automatically adjust to the types of content that is being displayed. So while it is static, being optimized for crispness, that's a hard word to say, crispness, and clarity, while it is moving, optimized for smoothness and fluidity. And that is something that should just happen in the background. Like you don't need to have to toggle back and forth between settings, because in presentations, frankly, like the one I'm giving now, you will go back and forth between static content and moving content. And so this is just another example of that sort of behind the scenes things that improve the experience. Again, people may not even totally put their finger on, but there's AI back there that's helping the system decide how to optimize the experience for the viewers and how to make the experience just richer and more seamless in general. All right. So we've talked a bit about some of those foundational layers. I want to move next into Teams Premium and then Copilot. So these are areas where we continue to go even beyond that sort of foundation layer to places where we are leveraging intelligence for really specific user experiences and for outcomes that we think are going to increase productivity. We talk a lot about focusing on what matters most. And you saw that in the research that I shared at the beginning of the presentation. AI allows me to focus on the real work, not the yuck work. Yuck work is, of course, a very technical term. One of the words that my manager, Jared, likes to talk about is drudgery, which I think is just a fantastic word. But, all of these pieces of our job that are not particularly high value, but have up until now been frankly just sort of necessary. And one of my favorite examples is taking notes during meetings. This is a tough one, right? Like you spend the time arguing about who's doing it and then frankly being worried that they didn't do a good job. People have different recollections in retrospect of what was and was not captured in a meeting. One of my favorites, oh, we discussed that. Oh, no, we didn't. This is one of the things one of our product leaders says, no one should ever have to take notes in meetings ever again. And as much as that sounds a bit dramatic, it's like, you're right. Like, isn't this a great example of something that could add enormous amount of value to productivity by just taking that off the plate of the people who are participating? And I want to talk about how we're going to do that through Intelligent Recap. And then when I get to Copilot, I'll show you some examples of it as well. And then the second part that I want to talk about in the Teams Premium world specifically is live translation. So I'm not sure if anyone is leveraging captions today. This is certainly critical for work that spans different geographies, different languages, different hearing and listening capabilities, et cetera. The ability to translate those captions in a real-time way to additional languages is frankly quite magical for people who are working across language barriers with their customers, with their colleagues, et cetera. And that's another thing which frankly AI has simply unlocked for us. The ability to do that effectively and efficiently was not available, until fairly recently. Like it just was too hard and too consuming of energy and of GPU, et cetera. And it's another area where we've just seen a really big gap, a really big jump in terms of the effectiveness that this type of technology can offer. But let's talk first about Intelligent Recap. So if you joined Abby's session, I think it was yesterday or the day before, you saw an overview of Teams Premium. Intelligent Recap is one of the pieces of the premium offer that we've heard the most positive feedback about. As somebody who uses it frequently, this is I'm going to use words like game changer, which I know is a bit hokey, but wow, right? Like to the extent that I either am doing so many things, it's hard to remember every single meeting I attended. I'm typically in meetings basically all day, every day. Or I had to miss the meeting or was multitasking during it. The fact that I have confidence that I'm not going to fall behind, that I'm not going to miss the part where someone said, oh, Caroline will do that. I mean, horrifying, right? Like somebody signed you up for something and you don't even know. The fact that this just takes that worry and allows me to be productive with the meetings that I do join. Again, sorry for the hokey phrase, but it's a bit of a game changer in terms of how I work and how I'm able to allocate my time. It makes the decision to skip a meeting a very different calculation. It's not the same as it was before when it comes to how bad is it going to be if I wasn't there? Am I actually going to get the right sort of catch up afterwards? So Intelligent Recap is actually a bucket of features. It all exists within, this recap experience, which is a pane that you will have associated with the meeting if you're a Teams Premium user. But it's actually a number of different components that allow you to navigate through the meeting in ways that are going to be most useful to you. So, automatic generated meeting chapters. Like there was an agenda with 4 sections. It would be great to go to section 3. Is one example of a feature set within Intelligent Recap. Another is personalized timeline markers. And I like this one a lot because it is both topical, which is actually a new element that we're rolling out shortly, but also by person. So if you're looking for the moment at which Nicole was talking, the ability to literally click into a video means I'm not watching a 2-hour meeting with the 2 hours I guess I have after my children go to bed. I'm able to go to that part where she was talking and listen to just explicitly what she said. I will tell you that the bar for watching the video of a meeting, I love that we record them. I love all the optionality that it now gives me. The bar for watching a 2-hour meeting after it already happened is very, very high. I have to really want to know all the ins and outs of that meeting to sit there for another, 120 minutes of my life. But this, being able to drill in on exactly the section that I'm most interested in, is incredibly useful. And again, it allows me to feel like I was there, and I have the context, I have the actual video, right? Like I have the facial expressions, I have the tones, etc., even though I was not present. And finally, these suggested notes and tasks. I say suggested, we're going to talk about this a little bit when I get to Copilot. Our vision of AI is not that it's replacing the human intellect, the human insights, the ability for a person to know what was and was not important. It's augmenting. So to the extent that it provides, based on its read of the transcript, here's what we saw, we the technology, I shouldn't even call it we, it saw, as the most important things, the most important takeaways, the things you should pay attention to, et cetera. Again, this is almost a philosophical statement, like it's a great starting point, right? And it may not be right all the time, but we've become very enamored, I will say I'm enamored at least, with this idea of it being usefully wrong. So even when a suggested note is not exactly on point, it's really thought-provoking, right? Because it's coming from the transcript. So, maybe it says we agreed to do X and we actually agreed to do X prime. Well, what was it about X prime that wasn't captured? Were we not clear? Were there places where our conversation may have left some gaps for everyone to know what X prime was relative to X? And those sort of learnings between us as the users and the AI generated notes and tasks are only going to continue to make the model better and better. Suggested tasks, same thing. I spoke earlier about this idea of like being voluntold. It's one of my favorite words. So you're in a meeting or maybe you're not in a meeting and someone says, oh, Caroline's going to do that. Wow, I would really love to make sure that that does not fall through the cracks. And so being able to have those tasks and the person assigned to them is incredibly useful to make sure that the work keeps moving forward. And I mentioned this earlier. I won't do the demo here because it's a bit long, but live translations for meeting captions, we're just hearing really strong feedback as a powerful addition to the productivity features that companies are offering their organizations that span, whether it's multiple geographies, even just comfort level, whether, English is your first language or your second language, or French is your first language or second language. It's providing that optionality in real time so you don't miss a beat in the meeting. You're not waiting until later to sort of go back and look and see in a language that's more comfortable to you or you're potentially more confident in, what was said. You can have that interaction live within the meeting. We will be sharing, of course, all these materials with you. And this is one of the links that I'll ask Sarah to highlight because it's fascinating to see the extent to which this is improving user experience, allowing them to maintain participation in the conversation, maintain that flow in the conversation in a language, but having the benefit of the language that, again, they are most familiar with and helps them be most effective. All right, I'm going to end with Copilot. If you saw our announcements over the last couple months, specifically a month ago, a month and 4 days, but who's counting, on March 16th, this has been just an enormously exciting advancement. And as somebody who's involved in the launch, the thing that's just amazing about Copilot is how beneficial it is to run these large language model type apps and functionality within the context of Microsoft 365. And I'm going to talk about that I'll go ahead and go there now, because the thing that's different, like I said, is we're not looking at this purely as sort of an automation thing. This replaces X. In our view, it's about being alongside the actual user, the person who's trying to accomplish things, helping them be more effective by leveraging the knowledge that they already have within their organization, just in a much more effective way, and in a manner that allows them to use their own words and their own types of questions. We talk a lot about the difference between our model and our approach to Copilot and some of the other things that you'll see on the market and people talking about. It's really that middle piece I'd like to talk about, right? So large language models exist. Many people are joking now about how fast the numbers keep going up, like when will we be at 7 or 8 or whatever? And there are certainly competing LLMs out there, right? In terms of different approaches, different underlying foundational technology, et cetera. The thing that makes Copilot magical, like I said, in my opinion, is the Microsoft Graph. So it's applying that technology, not just, to the internet, but to you and your context, asking what happened with this account yesterday. And for this technology to be able to say, well, actually, there were these 5 meetings, this file was updated, this customer call happened. It's the contextual element of it that is powered by your information and is completely and totally private to you. It is specific to you. That really, from my perspective at least, makes this a bit magical. And then, the sort of third piece of the puzzle is the fact that it then manifests itself through the Microsoft 360 apps that your users are already using and familiar with and comfortable with. So they're not, like I said in my comment around like bolt-on versus fabric, they're not then going off somewhere else, right, to get the benefits of this. They're in Word, they're in PowerPoint, they're in Outlook. They're doing the thing that they're always do, but they're able to do it so much better because they can leverage, like I said, the institutional knowledge that was always there anyway, but was potentially really hard for them to find or to utilize in a way that was particularly effective. And when I talk about only you, this is another thing that we do feel is quite different about our approach to Copilot relative to some of the other offerings you may be considering, you may be playing with, etc. This is around a deployment of AI and a deployment of LLM that is still within Microsoft's broader approach to security, to compliance, privacy. Responsible AI, I know many of you have probably read a lot. This is a topic that we will grapple with for a long time. We are investing a ton, just so much energy and thoughtfulness and technology. And it's going to be similar to like the security discussions of the past couple of years, where it's all about keeping up with it and staying ahead of the things that could be coming our way that we don't even see yet, but will be the next frontier for us to tackle. But again, the way that Copilot runs is not outside of the way that we run the rest of our enterprise stack. It's within, and it is built on the same principles and the same commitment that hopefully you've come to expect from us across all of our offerings. This one doesn't break that mold. It challenges us in different ways, for sure. It's new, and there's a level of sort of day-to-day interaction that's going to constantly push us to get better and better. But it is not apart. It is simply woven into our broader construct of how we deliver products and the commitments that we make to our customers. So I'm going to show you next a quick overview of how Copilot works in teams. Copilot, like I had on I think I had the one with all of the different icons. Copilot will span across many of our Microsoft 365 apps, many. And we will just keep announcing more and more. This is not a like, and then we're done kind of moment. No, this is the beginning of a much larger story for us as we continue to find the most effective ways to deploy this type of technology into our broader solution set. But whether it's writing an email in Outlook, starting a presentation, one of the ones I know people love is I have something in a Word file. Can I please not start from scratch when I go to make it a presentation, or vice versa? Wouldn't that just be phenomenal? You've already done so much of the upfront thought work to build, let's call it the proposal file. To not then start from scratch when you go to do the presentation that's going to go with that proposal file, to be able to leverage the words that you've already used, the concepts that you've already pulled, and just very quickly get to that beautiful presentation. And again, not auto, like with your input, with your I don't like this. And you get to tell it, I don't like this, by saying things like, I don't like this, which is another thing that I've super appreciated is I don't have that perfection barrier. Interacting with Copilot does not require me to be an expert in coding language or really specific search requirements or anything else. I get to talk to it the way I would talk to you, the way I would talk to my colleagues. This was too long. This was sort of mean. I've actually said that to Copilot. Can you make this more friendly? And that's the type of feedback that Copilot is able to ingest. And then, like we've said before, leverage the context of your organization, of previous documents, et cetera, to bring back a really great solution. So I'm going to play this one out. Are you all hearing sound?
We're not
No.
hearing sound.
Okay.
No.
So I will speak to this because I want to make sure we have a chance to talk about this functionality. I'll actually pause for a second. So the primary way that Copilot interacts with teams at this point, and like I said, beginning of a journey, is the in-meeting experience. So what you're seeing on the screen right now is what we call the Copilot pane. And it is the sort of first entry point that many people experience as they start to get used to Copilot in Teams, which is what has happened so far. Maybe you were multitasking, maybe you joined late. But as long as the meeting is being recorded, which is like a really critical thing to understand because we need that underlying data of the transcript to make all of this magic possible. If the meeting is being recorded, you can simply ask Copilot, recap this meeting, catch me up. What has happened? I've used this 3 times today, I'm not kidding you. To the extent that it can quickly summarize what you've missed so that when you do join or when you do jump back into the conversation, you're not behind, you have the context. And then you can go further, right? Next step. What should I ask about? What are the unresolved issues? One that I love to ask just because it's always super interesting is what is the mood of the room? I asked in a sales call this morning, how is the team feeling about the outlook for the coming quarter? And it gave me a response that was both accurate and insightful. The team is enthusiastic about X. The team has concerns about Y. The team would love to know more about Z. And being able to succinctly get to that output is something that is incredibly useful within the meeting. So another thing, I'm not sure if this is going to show you, and I apologize for our sound things. I'll make sure that you have access to the clip with full sound, is the ability to pull different formats and to pull references, like even beyond the meeting itself. So to the extent that you can ask it, one of the things I've also tried many times is, we've been talking about different options. Can you please build a pro and con table for the solution that was proposed by TJ? This literally happened this morning. People on the call may know TJ. And not only is it processing the information and building the insights, it's actually then formatting in a way that is allowing me to sort of quickly get to what is a very productive next step. Being able to focus on what comes next and not like trying to sort through what has already happened is a huge gain that this type of technology offers. And like I said, the connection to your broader content through that broader sort of co-pilot element across your Microsoft 365 apps is only going to empower more and more insightful discussions and then better takeaways when it comes to moving forward. So if you would like to know more, which I hope you will, I hope you don't leave this saying, I never want to talk about AI in Teams again. That would be a negative outcome. But if you would like to learn more, we have a ton of depth on the way that we're thinking about AI. If you're interested in going deeper on any of the technical components that I mentioned at the beginning, we have some wonderful resources too. And in general, again, I would sort of leave you with there's lots more to come. There's a ton of richness that we think the application of AI can have in the productivity world. This is not, like I said, some sort of weird science project. It's real and it's helpful. And I would encourage you, to the extent that you're able on this journey, to start trying it, right? I know it's not available everywhere today, so before you yell at me on that one. But as it becomes available in market, the best thing I can say for anyone who's trying to understand whether these types of tools are going to be helpful, if they like them, how their users will react, etc., is to try it. And to run it in a meeting. Obviously, I'm very biased. I am the Teams meeting person. That is literally my job. But to run it in a meeting and see whether you feel like the meeting was more productive because you had this there than it would have been before. And again, expect much more from us in this area, both on the core functionality level, as well as the way that Copilot is enhancing our productivity solutions and unlocking what we hope is a much more sort of creative and drudgery-free work life moving forward. So Sarah, I will turn it back to you. Thank you all so much for the time. Again, I know I'm presentation 7 or something like that. So thank you so much for sticking with us.
You did amazing, and thank you. That was a great presentation, and hopefully everyone in the audience agrees with me. Love to see some of those reactions if you did enjoy this presentation today. So with that, we would love to get your feedback. So Jonathan is actually going to put it in the chat window, but it's also listed here on the screen. We would love to get your feedback on what you thought of today's session. This whole summit is dedicated to our health and life science group, but we also open it up to all. But we love doing these kind of summits twice a year, and we like to get feedback from our customers. What would you like to see? What would you like us to bring new speakers on, do demos? Earlier today, we had a session focused on easy tasks on how to leverage Power Automate in Teams. So your feedback is so important to us, and we do have a couple of prizes if you do fill out the survey. So appreciate that input. Also, we have 2 sessions left. Tomorrow, we have one focused on Viva Engage and frontline workers leveraging mobile devices. So if you haven't registered for those sessions, but that is a topic of interest, go ahead and click those registration links and you will get that info sent over immediately. And lastly, If you want to stay on top of all of these sessions we're doing, feel free to register. We do actually have a Viva Engagement community. It's dedicated for our health and life sciences clients, but if you'd like to attend, it's open to all. And we actually host 30-minute sessions every third Thursday of the month, and it's all focused on Microsoft Teams and Viva. So definitely, if that's something of interest, sign up and we'll make sure to not only include you in the Viva Engage community, but also send you reminders. So with that, if you have any other questions for our speakers today, feel free to post it in the chat. If not, hopefully we see you tomorrow. And thank you again for joining. And we will definitely post today's video and the links that Caroline mentioned today out on the Health Life Science blog. You'll see it in a couple hours. So with that, we'll kind of end it. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you so
everyone. Thanks
much.
for joining. Thanks, Caroline. Appreciate your time today. Don't forget to sign up for tomorrow. There's still time. And click the survey button.